Thanks for coming to pray and for joining us in these 24 hours of prayer. We do this often as a church body, but this month we're doing it a little uniquely. We're focusing our prayers on those who are a part of our life who do not yet know Jesus Christ. As you know, during the sermons or last month, we've been talking about how Christ had a mission. He came to seek and to save the lost. And Christ's mission is our mission as his followers. And there are a lot of things that distract us from and keep us from having the same heart for those that don't know Jesus that he had and demonstrated for us. And so you're in for an adventure and a journey in this next hour. And what we wanted to do is just give you a couple of thoughts, first of all, from God's Word, just to frame off what this next hour is meant to accomplish, as well as give you some practical thoughts or encouragements as to how you might go about praying together as a group of people over the next hour in this manner. There's a couple of verses I want to share with you. The first one is from the book of Romans, chapter 10, verse 1, where we see a great example of this kind of prayer in the Apostle Paul himself. He says in that verse, talking about his own countrymen, his fellow Jewish people, he says that his heart's desire and his prayer to God for them is for their salvation. Here we see the Apostle Paul praying to God for the salvation of his fellow countrymen, the Jewish people, who many of them knew all of the right information, but when Christ came, they missed it. They missed the coming of their Messiah, and that broke Paul's heart, and so he prayed that God would save those people. The other verse I want to share from you is a passage from the Gospel of Mark, and it's about Jesus himself, and it's a great example of how intimacy with God drives the mission that God has given us in our own lives, and we see it illustrated in the life of Jesus himself. In Mark 1, starting in verse 32, it says, "When evening came, after the sun had set, they began bringing to him all who were ill and those who were demon-possessed. The whole city had gathered at the door." This was shaping up to be a very busy night for Jesus. In verse 34, "He healed many who were ill with various diseases. He cast out many demons. He was not permitting the demons to speak because they knew who he was." So Jesus had a busy night. He was awake well into the evening, healing and teaching and casting out demons. But verse 35 of Mark 1 says this, "In the early morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went away to a secluded place and was praying there." What a great example that Jesus himself was seeking intimacy with the Father through prayer. Verse 36, "Simon and his companions searched for him, and they found him, and they said to him, 'Jesus, everybody's looking for you.'" And verse 38 is a key verse. "Jesus said to them, 'Let us go somewhere else to the towns nearby, so that I may preach there also, for that is what I came for.'" And if you look earlier in this passage in verse 14, it says specifically that Jesus came preaching the gospel of God. Jesus said, "That's what I came for, to preach the gospel of the good news of God. Let's go and accomplish that." And verse 39 says, "He went into their synagogues throughout all Galilee, preaching and casting out demons." And you see this beautiful picture of how Jesus himself secures intimacy with the Father through prayer. And from those times of intimacy flows his movement forward in the mission that he came to accomplish. And how true is that going to be of us? That if we're going to be out and sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with people that we know, it's going to flow from intimacy, cultivating intimacy with the Father, where we get God's heart for people and where our mind is wrapped around the great good news that the gospel is. And so I just want to encourage you with those thoughts as you enter into this time, as you set aside an entire hour just to pray. You're really seeking intimacy with God, where you're asking for him to shape and transform your heart, to give you a heart for those that don't know Jesus, and to give you a boldness to move forward into this world to share that good news with them. As you go about trying to pray over the next hour, that might be intimidating to some, the idea of setting aside either that much time to pray or praying in a group of people. And so we just wanted to give you a couple things to focus your prayers on. First, as a group, spend some time worshiping God in prayer, just thanking him for your own salvation. Maybe remembering what it was like before you knew Christ and how God intersected your world and the people that he used. Just in prayer, repeat back some of those events to God and thank him that he didn't leave you to yourself, but he loved you enough to draw you to faith in himself. That'd be a great place to start. Then what we'd like to ask you to do is just spend some time praying for the community that we live in as a whole. Praying for the city of Fort Collins, praying for our nation, praying for the multitudes of people around us that maybe you don't know them by name, but there are many people around us who don't yet know Jesus Christ. And praying that as a church and as individuals, God would use us to make an impact in this community for Him. And then, thirdly, take some time in your group just going around and praying for individuals, praying for people that God has placed in your life. Maybe it's people you work with, maybe it's somebody from your family, maybe it's people that you live nearby, people in your neighborhoods. Praying specifically for people in your life who don't know Christ, that God would open their eyes to the news of the gospel, that God would give you opportunities to share the gospel, that you would be faithful and bold to take those opportunities, and praying for them and for the specific and unique things that are going on in their lives right now. And one quick and good reminder when you're praying in a group, sometimes it's easy for people to pray long prayers, but probably the best thing to do when you're in a group to keep everybody fresh and involved in the prayers is to just pray lots of short prayers. So when you start to pray whatever's on your mind and heart, but keep it short and let somebody else chime in. And then just go back and forth in the group, and you'll find that an hour passes by very quickly. And our hope is that you will enjoy this hour, that God will draw your heart near to Himself, and that as a result of our prayers, two things would happen. Number one, our hearts would be more lined up with the mission that God has left us with, to share the gospel with those who don't know, to see people come to a life-transforming relationship with Jesus Christ. And then the second thing is that God would be moved by our prayers to work in mighty ways in people's lives, to draw them to faith, because salvation is not something that we can do. It's something that only God can do in the life of a person, to open their eyes and to open their heart to see the great work that Jesus Christ did when He died on the cross. We hope you enjoy. Thanks for being here.